So we're in an interesting position when it comes to the top five fantasy quarterbacks because I started Corner's fantasy rankings earlier this week when it came to positional rankings, and for the first five, that's as far as I got for quarterbacks. And I ranked Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson as my top five for fantasy quarterbacks in 2020. So if I'm looking at their schedules, Lamar Jackson was a huge winner in the fact that he only plays 3 weeks against 2019 top 10 fantasy defenses against quarterbacks.
Wasn't
He
there?
plays
Sorry.
he plays Pittsburgh twice, where he plays them in week 7 and week 12, and he plays New England week 10. Outside of those 3 weeks, Lamar Jackson doesn't have a single matchup with a defense that ranked in the top 10 against fantasy quarterbacks in 2019, including a week 16 matchup with the New York Giants and a week 17 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals if your league goes that far. Lamar Jackson's fantasy playoff schedule goes Cleveland, Jacksonville, New York Giants, Cincinnati Bengals.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there an idiot who was on this podcast maybe even a week ago who said that
Oh my god.
Dak Prescott might overtake Lamar? Now,
Oh, okay. I wasn't that idiot. All right, I totally thought he was talking about me.
no, he was talking about me. And see, I didn't. When I said that, was I looking at the schedules? No.
I
That
mean,
was before the schedule came out. But
this
to
is
your
just
credit,
to prove, though,
to his
schedules make a difference.
to his own credit, Dak Prescott's schedule, he only has 4 matchups against teams that were in the top 10 against fantasy quarterbacks in 2019. He
It's
has
such a
the
tough one.
Steelers in week 9, the Vikings in week 11, the Ravens in week 13, and then you have a red flag. You have the San Francisco 49ers in week 15. Would that week 15 matchup shy you away from drafting Dak Prescott in 2020, knowing the fact that you're going to have to take him high with how high his stock is, and then in the first or second week of your fantasy playoffs, he has an extremely tough game
I mean,
against the Niners defense.
you're in that elite category, though. You know, we know who the top guys should be, and if you're getting drafted that high, I'm picking you because I'm going to stick it out. You know, like you better. And I think we said this. This is one of the things we said about Dak. You better be better. You better be just as good or better. You can't go down as Dak Prescott. You can't go down. Like, we expect Lamar Jackson to be worse. But a guy like Dak, you need to be better or just as good. Same thing for a few other guys in that category. The only guy that we're expecting regression from is obvious, and it's Lamar Jackson.
And
Everyone else.
with that schedule, we don't even know how much regression we're going to get.
Exactly. And same thing can be said for Dak. You know, you just had your best fantasy year. You better bring it again, and you have an easier schedule.
Now, that's a scenario for me. Let's say I take Dak early, and then I don't have to think about quarterback for a long time. That's a scenario where I start looking at that like I said, that I mentioned week 5 to 8. I start looking at schedules for the end of the season, and that's what the point. I have that in the back of my head where Dak's playing San Francisco in week 15, and I start, writing down potential safety valves. There's nothing even if I take an elite quarterback, there's nothing stopping me from carrying 2 quarterbacks late in the season.
Would it be smart for a Dak Prescott owner in 2020 to flip him after week 8? Because after week 8, we see Dak Prescott has against Pittsburgh, bye week, at Minnesota, Washington, super easy, Baltimore, Cincy, San Fran, Philly, and then the Giants. So we have, of the 4 hard opponents that Dallas has, according to the 2019 performance of fantasy defenses against quarterbacks, all of his tough games are at the end. Do you flip him for someone maybe like let's say a Matt Ryan? Matt Ryan plus some.
But if he's going to get off to the kind of start that we think he might at that season, I think you're looking to gain more assets outside of quarterback. So yeah,
That's what I mean. You
Absolutely.
downgrade at quarterback for an easier schedule and add a flex piece.
I think if the situation is right, you absolutely go for it.
I think so too. Now, a winner and a loser I have when it comes to quarterbacks and what the schedule has dealt them. I already mentioned Lamar Jackson as a winner because he has 3 tough games according to what defenses did in 2019. But you look at Lamar Jackson's playoff schedule at Cleveland, hosting the Jaguars, and then hosting the Giants. And then at Cincy if your league goes week 17. That's as easy as it gets when it comes to a fantasy playoff schedule. So if you're, it might be extra incentive to reach for Lamar Jackson in 2020 drafts, knowing the fact that his playoff schedule gets so easy. He doesn't have a Steelers game to worry about week 16. He doesn't have anything daunting. In that defense, maybe Cleveland has some promise, but I don't have any promise in Jacksonville, the Giants, or the Bengals defense. I don't see them improving. So Lamar Jackson's a definite winner when it comes to the schedule game. Another winner that I saw was farther down the list and has been talked about a lot, Tom Brady.
Yeah, schedule favorability for sure.
Tom Brady has 4 games in the first 6 weeks where he plays top 10 fantasy defenses against 2019 quarterbacks, where he plays at Denver, up-and-coming team, kind of younger. Defense is getting a little older,
right?
But they've been solid against quarterbacks for a couple of years now. We can trust their defense to not be terrible. They're not going to be the Bengals next year against fantasy quarterbacks. Hosting the Chargers, at the Bears, and then their hardest game of their 2020 season, according to the 2019 rankings, is hosting the Green Bay Packers. And we've seen the Packers get roasted defensively by good teams.
By good offenses.
So the Green Bay's ranking might be slighted a little bit based on playing Trubisky twice and playing Stafford's backups twice in 2019. So maybe we don't trust their top 5 ranking in 2020, which we shouldn't. And then you look at the whole rest of their schedule and you look at what Tom Brady has for the fantasy playoffs, hosting Minnesota week 14, and then at Atlanta, at Detroit, and hosting Atlanta.
Yeah. That says it all right. When was the last time you could bank on Atlanta's defense?
I don't even think you can bank on that in their Super Bowl run.
Not once, not ever.
It's been a long time since we've been able to bank on Atlanta's defense against anything.
They're good for like one 12-point game a year.
And Atlanta's defense against fantasy quarterbacks the last 2 years, they averaged 20 points against in 2019, 21 points against in 2018.
Wow. There you go.
So those are the 2 winners that I have when it comes to the schedule game. One loser, and there's a lot of hype around him for this year, Josh Allen.
Yeah, his schedule is tough.
After their bye week's week 11. After their bye week, you have the Chargers, the Niners, the Steelers, the Broncos, and the Patriots.
All with pushes in mind. Like, all those teams can make a push. Obviously the Bills can as well, but that schedule sure does make it hard.
The Bills were a team where you were streaming Josh Allen against teams in the middle of last year.
Yes.
And now they're on the opposite end where you're avoiding a lot of their opponents. So when it comes to fantasy playoff schedules, as of right now, I don't think any of them get harder than the Bills.
What's the first half of the schedule look like? Is that another scenario which we could see holding on to a guy for 6 to 8 weeks and then trying to flip him?
Yeah, before their bye week in week 11, the only defense they played that was top 10 against quarterbacks is the Patriots.
Wow.
And we already said that we don't trust the Patriots for 2020. So he could be going off. He could be a top 3-4 fantasy quarterbacks through 10 weeks. But then the real defenses come in.